It's an area that's had to come to terms with more than its share of trauma. 3 years ago, the Kempsey bus smash taxed the resources of rescue workers and medical staff as the casualties flooded in. There was no chapel then, no quiet place for relatives to grieve or gather their thoughts. In a response to calls from staff and the public for a chapel, the community rallied with funds and labour. The building, complete with furnishings and landscaping, was opened today by Mrs. Katerina Sarzotti. The chapel is non-denominational and non-sectarian. Clergy from throughout the district offered it their blessings at the opening ceremony. As well as a place to contemplate, there is a small counselling room and kitchen. A closed-circuit video system may be installed at a later date to provide services to be transmitted to patients' rooms.
The majestic Christchurch Cathedral in Newcastle, the venue for the historic and holy occasion. Inside, more than 1,000 friends and relatives of the 14 ordinands, 11 women and 3 men, witnessed the moving ceremony. The opening procession included clergy from other dioceses and supporters from neighbouring churches. Under the guiding hand of retired Auxiliary Bishop of Newcastle, Geoffrey Parker, the ordinands were presented for service. A lone voice opposing the elevation of women into the priesthood sounded the concerns of those unwilling to accept the change. The objections were dismissed by Bishop Parker, claiming they had already been dealt with by the various sittings of Synod. Dean Lawrence outlined the importance of the occasion. With the laying on of the hands, a sign of unity and support, the ordinands were invested as priests, hailing a new era in the Newcastle diocese. The celebration of Holy Communion was followed by tears of happiness, embracing the future. A standing ovation greeted the new priests. The overwhelming feeling is one of joy tinged with relief. The historic event marks a triumphant end to a struggle which has lasted almost 20 years, one which has now opened the door to allow other women to enter the priesthood.
It's been a long wait. I've been ordained nearly 5 years, a deacon nearly 5 years, so it's been a long wait.
It's not all over. This is just a start. This is beginning of all sorts of new things and wonderful things.
Any words of encouragement for women?
Shortly before 9 last night, a male supervisor and female bar attendant were closing the club, the 47-year-old supervisor attempting to secure the male toilets.
He was confronted by 2 individuals in there, male persons, who had balaclavas over their head. One was armed with what appeared to be a sawn-off shotgun and the other a knife.
He was forced into the bar area. The 36-year-old female attendant saw this and ran for help.
And tried to hail a passing car at the front of the club, which was unsuccessful, and at that point she was caught up to by one of the offenders and forced back into the club.
During the commotion, the male employee was stabbed in the throat and stomach.
The two employees were then forced to lie on the floor and ordered at gunpoint to open the safe, claiming they didn't know how. They were then locked in the cool room while the offenders searched the club for money.
They found a small amount of cash, then released the employees from the cool room before fleeing in an orange Datsun 180B with a white top. A neighbour spotted the getaway car and raised the alarm. Police are looking for two males, aged in their early to mid-20s, both between 163 to 168 centimetres tall, of slim builds, and last seen wearing trench coats.
While many people are growing accustomed to having their groceries scanned, a similar process is being used to sort out mail. This OCR machine is making the process more efficient. It was introduced early this year, but this month was its greatest challenge. Since early December, Christmas cards, packages and letters have put Australia Post to the test. Letters are fed into the machine, which can scan the postcode and automatically sort the mail.
We've been running for 23 hours a day, non-stop, with only about 1 hour per day for maintenance, so it's worked pretty well.
On its busiest day this month, 825,000 letters were sorted. While the process is streamlined, according to Australia Post, you had to put your cards in the mail today if you wanted them delivered before Christmas. Jane Anderson, NBN News.
At about 3:30 this morning, the men's car broke down on the Warnervale railway crossing. After unsuccessful attempts to restart it and push it from the tracks, the pair got back into the vehicle and fell asleep. Their rude awakening came when the crossing bells sounded and the gates came down, trapping them on the tracks, in the path of an oncoming freight train. By the time the train driver saw the car, it was too late to stop, and the vehicle and its passengers were shunted 10 metres along the track. The engine crew freed the men, who were then taken to Wyong Hospital for treatment of minor injuries. And another man has escaped unharmed after a freak semi-trailer accident south of Taree. The petrol tanker was travelling south along the Pacific Highway at Rainbow Flat at 11 o'clock last night when the driver saw a tyre on the road. Police say he swerved onto the wrong side of the road to miss it. The semi went down an embankment and ploughed into bushland. The driver walked away from the wreck uninjured. Andrew Lobb reporting, NBN News.
The David Jones Staff Choir serenaded shoppers, reflecting the calm atmosphere pervading shopping centres throughout the region. Even though the recession is a year deeper and longer, the major retailers report sales are comparable to last year's. They aren't giving away how much Christmas spending there's been, but say trading has been steady. Fine weather certainly made it easier to make the trip for those last-minute buys and also inspired a little pre-Christmas indulgence. Shoppers received a feast for their ears, a Christmas gift not wrapped, but certainly one to be treasured.
It's $1 billion deal building 6 mine hunters for the Australian Navy.
This project goes over about 7 years, and I would estimate probably 200 people, 200 jobs for 7 years.
The Australian Submarine Corporation at Tomago is up against Transfield Holdings and Australian Defence Industries for the job. ASC will spend $2 million just tendering, most of that work coming out of its Adelaide headquarters. The contract is expected to be placed by mid-1994. Today, federal member for Shortland Peter Morris called on the state government to dig deep for Newcastle.
There is a need for the deepening of that if that site is used to get access into the river, and that's an area which the state government could very, very well assist.
Premier Fay has told Mr Morris to mind his own business, but the Australian Submarine Corporation is keen for any help.
Any assistance from the state government would be welcome, and I do have a bit of a shopping list which I'll pass on to them.
Race 3, the Armidale Pharmacy Pace for 4-year-olds and upwards, over 1,980 metres, offered prize money of $1,000. First home was number 7 Rotundo, followed in by number 3 Daffy's Value and number 5 Gypsy Koaraku. Race 4 at Armidale was the Shoemaker Pace, over 2,360 metres. First home number 10 Hope 1, followed by number 9 Solandi and number 1 Tutabella. First home was number 7 Rotundo, followed in by number... The American quartet looked awesome in their matching Camaros, but it was their awesome driving that caught the eye of the spectators. Led by Charlie Swartz and Scott Bloomquist, the visitors hammered the new-look Australian outfit 45 points to 27. Newcomer Darryl Kime had a frustrating test debut. Car handling problems saw him finish with just 1 point. Kime was the first victim of team changes. He'll be replaced by former New South Wales champion Bob Brewer for the second test. Meanwhile, at Parramatta last night, a spectacular crash from 12-time world champion Steve Kinser. Kinser walked away from the tumble, but his $50,000 car was ruined. Kinser will be in Newcastle for the Sprint Car Grand Prix tomorrow night in a different car.
It was a rough awakening for Percy Jack in his bush shack at Head and Grit early on Christmas Day. 2 men broke in, stole his life savings and torched the shanty with Percy inside. He was lucky to escape with minor injuries.
The victim's a 70-year-old pensioner. He's quite lucky to survive.
Mr Jack's attackers are described as being aged in their 20s, 180 centimetres in height and of solid build. Cessnock detectives believe the pair knew the area and could strike again.
I'd be sort of appealing to anyone who has had a similar problem with people hanging around, or where they've been victims of some sort of serious offence where they've felt that they're either too afraid to sort of come forward and tell the police, or they feel too embarrassed, or if they'd like to come forward and let us know, because we really need the help on this one.
Once considered a jewel in the education system's crown, the 88-year-old Wickham Public School building has been sliding into ruin since it was closed after the earthquake. Responsibility for its repairs has been passed between government departments ever since. But Alderman John Sutton says the state government should take the blame for the building's neglect and give the estimated $1.5 million needed for its restoration.
They're still talking about the possibility of demolition. It's outrageous, it's unacceptable. They should be, like the federal government did with Customs House, they should be making a commitment to the building, a commitment to the city.
Alderman Sutton says the revamped building could be included in the Honeysuckle redevelopment.
Honeysuckle's going to need some sort of community infrastructure. It's a building that I think would serve as a wonderful community centre.
The Alderman's criticism isn't limited only to the state government. He says all levels could do more to patch up the city's face, scarred by the earthquake. But he says Macquarie Street has ignored the fate of not only the Wickham School, but also historic parts of the Royal Newcastle Hospital.
Those are very important heritage buildings, and they've sat there derelict and deteriorating for the past 3 years. It's about time that they came to the party.
Scott Bevan, NBN News.
It was a spectacular sight off picturesque Port Stephens, with 22 yachts competing in the Three Islands Ocean Race, the second leg of the Junior Offshore Group's Pittwater to Port Stephens regatta. It was tough going for the yachts, having to sail against the tide at both the start and on the home hop. In the light nor'easterly breeze, Spun Spa Special took an early lead and eventually took line honours, while Public Nuisance finished in second place in Division 2. In near-perfect conditions at Soldiers Point, the first of 7 heats in the Australian Open and Youth Championships got underway. There were more than 80 starters in the international 420 and 470 Olympic classes, all vying for a place in national teams set to compete in World Championships next year. Light wind conditions saw the race start delayed for a few hours, but once underway, Michael Coxon from New South Wales and the current Australian youth champion took an early and commanding lead. Further down the coast at Marmong Point in Lake Macquarie, it was relatively calm waters for the B14 Australian Championships. Skiffs from Victoria and New South Wales were taking full advantage of what wind there was for today's heat, the third of 7 to be held in Master and Open divisions over the next 5 days. Meanwhile, at Sunshine on Lake Macquarie, the national titles were underway for the 125 sailing dinghies. Around 45 dinghies provided a colourful sight as they sailed the Olympic Triangle course. Catherine Lamond, NBN News.
It's a major blow for the organisers. Their top draw card out of the tournament with a worrying groin problem. Lendl hasn't been able to train for weeks, struggling to put pressure on his front foot. Lendl's also out of the New South Wales Open and is in doubt for the Australian Open. But despite the setback, organisers are confident the Classic will again be a success. They're banking on the old guard of Newcombe, Rosewall, Lewis and Roach, 4 of the greatest to draw the crowds. The Classic will be held from January 6th to the 9th.
It was billed as the biggest party in Newcastle, and that's what it turned out to be. 3,200 revellers danced and drank their way through the night, pausing only at midnight to welcome in the new year. That countdown signalled the beginning of a $10,000 fireworks show on the harbour. Throughout the city, the light spectacular could be seen. And with the new year born, many chose to go home and sleep. For others, the party had just begun. There were obviously a lot of hangovers in Newcastle this morning, but a pounding head and heavy eyes weren't going to stop a lot of people from enjoying the day. The city beaches were alive with colour, the water too tempting to resist, and around Lake Macquarie, families and friends gathered to make the most of the public holiday.
And what's your resolution for this year?
To lose weight.
And New Year's wouldn't be the same without knowing the region's first baby. Meet Brittany Morgan Carr. She was born at 37 minutes past midnight at John Hunter Hospital. Brittany and mum Joyce of Balmoral were the centre of attention today. Baby Brittany not too excited about all the fuss. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
A 17-year-old Upper Hunter girl was enjoying New Year's celebrations about 2:30 this morning in Shoal Bay when she became separated from her boyfriend. Police say she was approached by two men who offered to help her and took her to the beach just off Shoal Bay Road. She was then allegedly sexually assaulted. The boyfriend, who had been searching for her, found her on the beach. Police are looking for a 20 to 25-year-old man about 180 centimetres tall, of medium build with light-coloured curly hair and a moustache. He was wearing a light-coloured t-shirt and jeans. The other offender is about 20 years old with brown hair and a goatee beard. The sexual assault was the most serious incident in a busy night for Nelson Bay Police, plus 14 additional highway patrol officers brought in to cope with the thousands of visitors to Port Stephens. 21 drink driving charges were laid in Nelson Bay, while another 8 were handed out at Tea Gardens. Officers say they're surprised by the number of drink drivers caught last night, compared with the previous New Year's Eve, during which only 5 PCA charges were laid. They also say they're surprised by the number of high PCA readings, including one woman who registered a blood alcohol level of 0.245. The Highway Patrol is continuing its operations in the Port Stephens area tonight. Scott Bevan, NBN News.
Golfer Craig Parry has played all over the world, and this was his first 9 holes at the Horizons course at Salamander Bay, Port Stephens. A small gallery watched the club's new touring pro, who was in magic touch. But all the attraction was on the 7th tee, the Craig Parry hole, and for the golfer himself, the feeling was better than winning a major tourney.
It's going to go down for the rest of time. I mean, when I'm dead and gone and everything like that, I mean, the hole's still going to be here, so, you know, it's a great honour. To golfing action on the Central Coast and the $25,000 Gosford Pro-Am. 72 professional and amateurs played 18 holes today, with another 18 tomorrow. Sydney's David Ecob is looking good, with last year's winner, Anthony Painter, keen to regain his title. Old warhorse Billy Dunk hit a 75, 4 over par. Peter Ryan, NBN News.
Today's grey skies were a welcome reprieve for lifesaver Dave Jamieson. In the last couple of weeks, the beaches from Sydney to the Queensland border have been packed with holidaymakers. It's not unusual for Bar Beach in Newcastle to attract more than 1,500 people, and it's up to Dave to ensure they don't get into trouble in the surf. Last week he carried out 9 rescues, but he says his job could be made much easier if parents kept a closer eye on their children.
I think a lot of parents have a look and see their children playing safely at home in the home pool, and come down here and the ocean's a lot different than the pool at home, I can assure you of that.
Dave says many youngsters overestimate their ability, particularly when they're on a boogie board.
The younger ones, they start floating away and then they panic and jump off and try to start swimming, and most of them can't swim very well.
And it's not only the surf which poses a problem. Dams and creeks are also hazardous.
A lot of rivers and dams, you have foreign objects under the water, and people should never dive into rivers or dams, should always take it steady going in there. And if they're with their parents, make sure the parents can swim.
According to the Mayor of Lake Macquarie, the city has suffered an identity problem. Although its population is bigger than its geographical neighbour Newcastle, it lacks the same profile. Lake Macquarie's leader says the time has come to end the tune of playing second fiddle.
We have been struggling in Lake Macquarie for some time now to identify ourselves as a city in its own right.
Mayor Carley says he's discussed the proposal with Lord Mayor John McNaughton, but the plan is yet to go before their respective councils. If accepted, a new letterhead will be used and cultural and sporting ties strengthened.
When Lake Macquarie is mentioned, Newcastle's mentioned. But if Newcastle is mentioned, Lake Macquarie will be mentioned along with it.
The Twin City idea has surprised aldermen like Newcastle's John Tate, who says Alderman Carley's announcement is news to him and others.
The distracting part about it all is that none of this has been mentioned to Council. It hasn't even been floated in Council.
He's concerned the move could isolate other cities operating under the umbrella of the Hunter Region Association of Councils.
Just wonder what members of councils like Port Stephens and Maitland and some of the upper Hunter councils are going to think about Newcastle joining up with Lake Macquarie in some sort of special way.
While the proposal may have good intentions, Alderman Tate is not convinced.
Whilst it might sound good on the surface, in the longer term it'll be seen to have not been much benefit, create a lot of confusion, and I think when the people of the respective local government areas really become aware of it, they'll have grave concerns.
Both councils will decide the future of the Twin City proposal next month. Melinda Smith, NBN News.
And looking to make sure that there are adequate after-hour services there.
Don't cut it out though, will you? You're already on till.
So can you just chase that?
The wedding of Leanne Brown and Kent Island was a traditional affair. A pretty church, the fellas in tuxes, Leanne resplendent in white, and two beautifully appointed Mack trucks as wedding vehicles. As the daughter of truck dealer Ray Brown, Leanne thought the big Macks would be the perfect way to rumble into married life. And let's face it, with a bull bar like that, there'd be no problems in getting to the church on time.
Driving here, we had cars stopping for us, letting us through, and eye lights flashing and all sorts of things. Gets a lot of attention.
The Macks almost stole the show at the wedding, with even the page boy wanting a go behind the wheel. And getting the bridal train into the truck proved a little trickier than slipping a ring on a finger. But finally, husband and wife were in the cab.
Are you taking this vehicle on the honeymoon?
Oh no, I don't think so. No, we want to get there quicker than that.
The 5 riders, 3 policemen, 1 ambulanceman and a school teacher, hail from the Gilgandra district. 4-year-old Sarah Smythe is the motivation behind the 4-day trek. She's suffering from nephroblastoma, a rare form of childhood cancer commonly known as Wilms tumour. Sarah's receiving chemotherapy at Camperdown's Children's Hospital. Drug treatment, travel and accommodation costs for her parents, who are with her around the clock, are expensive. These cyclists hope a little push from them will go a long way. As the group rounded the last bend, family and friends eagerly awaited their arrival. There was congratulations all around and a feeling of relief to see a job well done.
Initially we would have been hopeful of $2,000-3,000, but at this stage we would think we'd probably get about $10,000.
Melinda Smith, NBN News.
The Westpac Lifesaver chopper carried out about 8 rescue missions in the Coffs region last year. Usually emergency services, ambulance officers and police come together when there's an accident. Today, they gathered at Brailsford Park in Coffs Harbour for a training exercise.
Well, the helicopter's here in Coffs Harbour today for a familiarisation visit to the area to show the police, ambulance and SES the capabilities of the unit and the equipment that it carries.
Wayne O'Brien believes it's important for each service to know what the other does during an emergency.
So they can fly here and pick one of our paramedics or level 4 officers up to proceed to a serious incident.
Training involved winching and other techniques which would be used during a sea rescue, search for lost bushwalkers or car accident. Jane Anderson, NBN News. Newcastle's Harbour Regatta is one of the largest annual maritime events in Australia. This year, the highlight of the weekend will be the presence of the Bounty. The sailing ship was built in New Zealand in 1979 for the movie Mutiny on the Bounty, starring Mel Gibson and Anthony Hopkins. The tall ship will be open to the public.
We will operate 1-hour cruises on Newcastle Harbour for $15 for adults and $10 for kids. We take people out for 1 hour and you have coffee and tea on board.
But it won't just be sail power on the water. There'll be furious action with the return of the Formula 1 powerboats. Bob Halliday will be hoping to repeat last year's winning performance. Also, some of the world's fastest water skiers will be chasing World Cup qualifying points. There'll also be a naval presence on the harbour.
The French Navy have accepted an invitation and will make an official visit to Newcastle for the regatta. Be open to the public as well. The Royal Australian Navy will be here and participating.
Last year, about 80,000 people went to the regatta. Organisers expect a similar turnout this year. The event will be held on the 30th and 31st of January. Jane Anderson, NBN News.